Hello everyone, welcome to another monitoring power hour. And this month we're changing up things, both the timeline. This is typically not the same time that we present, so hopefully to catch some different people around the world at this time, and also bringing on somebody from industry. We have today from Lee from Monitum, and he's going to be talking about Monitum's journey with automated monitoring systems. So to start us off, we'll start by introducing ourselves here as the presenters. So we'll jump to the next slide. Yeah, so myself, Riley Smith, I work on the Trimble monitoring product team, and there's my email address. So if anyone wants to reach out at the end of this presentation, feel free. And I'll let Lee here introduce himself, and I'll let him really take it away with this really exciting webinar.
Thanks, Riley. And thanks, Riley, for the opportunity to contribute to what I think is a really exciting field, automation, IoT, and monitoring. Certainly a lot of potential moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity, Riley and Trimble, to present. Today, my presentations are just for those believing that this is not going to be a technical presentation on how to use T4D. Trimble's got some fantastic, certainly they've got some fantastic resources, and there's a great community out there that can help you understand the benefits of the software and how to actually use it. My presentation today is hopefully to share with you guys that this can be a highly successful investment. That really what I'm going to try and talk to you about today is our journey with automated monitoring over the last 6 years, and where we've evolved from, and where we think some of the future will hold. So myself, just a bit about myself. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. Those of you I know we're going across the world today, but I'm from Brisbane, which is on the East Coast. Fantastic place. If you haven't been here, please come and see us one day after all this crazy COVID stuff sorts itself out. Yeah, my background is I'm a registered surveyor. I studied a surveying degree here in Brisbane a little over 20 years ago. So my expertise is around largely around geospatial measurement science. But I've also been working in consulting for over 20 years, and my expertise is largely on a lot of large infrastructure and building construction projects. So I'm just the agenda for today, just to follow up with you guys, to give you a bit of a rundown. Today, the first thing I'm just going to do is get things rolling, just talk about a bit of a brief snapshot of a few interesting projects that we've actually been able to implement our monitoring services on over the last 6 years. I'm then going to talk a little bit about some critical aspects which I believe are fundamental if you want to deliver the best from the technology and deliver what I believe a really professional and high level of service that gives outstanding results. I'll just talk briefly about some of the challenges that you may, some of you I'm sure may have experienced some of these, but those of you that are new to the monitoring game, or a little bit unaware of what some of the pitfalls might be, I'll share some of that experience with you. And then I'll kind of conclude the presentation today with where I see some of the future opportunities to lie, and areas to maybe focus on for everyone in their future work. And Riley will just do a little bit of a conclusion at the end, just to share with you some of those fantastic resources that I mentioned around how to utilise and get into T4D and get the most out of it. So just to explain a little bit about our company, Monitum's a global leader in structural and geotechnical monitoring, and we really focus on complex infrastructure maintenance and construction projects. Our services really assist in building, they assist largely building and civil contractors, asset managers, and engineering designers to minimise risk by ensuring high quality monitoring data from tailored networks of connected sensors integrated with cloud computing. Our intelligent sensor networks are custom designed to deliver accurate and meaningful measurement data in near real time, which focuses on actionable results that empower our clients with the knowledge to make confident decisions that bring meaningful benefits to their projects. Okay. So the idea for Monitum as a company, as I said, I've been in consulting for over 20 years. Prior to starting Monitum as a company, we ran a successful, and still do run a successful consulting, surveying and mapping business, focusing more so on engineering and construction, mapping, LiDAR, and the like. But in servicing a lot of my building construction clients, I was really, I suppose, the idea for Monitum really sprung out of a lot of, I could see a change in the marketplace 5 or 6 years ago. These emerging trends were really around seeing more constrained conditions for a lot of my clients and customers in the building construction space. I was seeing evidence of sort of extended delays and rework due to structures not performing as they may have predicted, and lengthy delays, I suppose, in trying to substantiate and mitigate risk around those activities. I also saw a growing expectation on my clients, on builders and asset managers to increase safety and also corporate responsibility around their structures and around their activities. So that was a really big driver for them. I was seeing kind of increasing levels of risk being taken without timely and accurate information. As a surveyor, and I'm sure a lot of you on the phone today that may be in this game have seen how I was getting called in at the last minute to try and solve a problem which was very, very difficult to solve, and it could have been solved much more, much easily, and probably been avoided if we had accurate, timely data that was being supplied about some of these things in advance to them reaching a critical point. So I was seeing these types of trends, and I could see really there was a real need within the marketplace that timely, accurate information that could be trusted and relied upon for accurate decisions would really there was a real need within the community for that. So the values that we really set up behind what we wanted to do as a business, as Monitum, is really provide that customer-centric value around risk management for asset owners and builders and construction companies. Okay, we wanted to deliver that with the highest level of integrity. Obviously, a saying I always have, and one of my mentors shared with me many decades ago, was "You pay to be right," and certainly having information that's of the highest reliability and integrity is very, very important. But also, you know, the other value is for us to innovate, you know, to really think outside the box in the way that you may have traditionally managed a risk, to really push the limits of technology, cloud computing, also the way that people consume information, to try and come up with a really new opportunity and a new way of making a difference to some of these emerging trends and risks that we're applying to our clients. So, as I said, you know, we really specialise as a professional firm, and we're a professional consulting firm. we really specialize in the design and operation of world-leading IoT and geodetic and non-geodetic sensors, right? And the software to a variety of applications. So we use Trimble T4D as the core platform to host the integration of a host of different sensors. And we've been using T4D for Trimble T4D since the start of our journey back in 2014. We've found it's obviously a fantastic platform to operate the host of Trimble products that are out there. So everything from GNS sensors through to total stations, all those types of geodetic sensors perform very, very well with T4D. And but it's also a fantastic platform and extremely customizable for a host of different non-geodetic sensors that we use. So everything from vibration through to structural sensors, geotechnical sensors. We've integrated noise, environmental sensors, all these different types of things can be really, the power of integration of that information is extremely valuable in evaluation. So we've used the T4D product since the start, and we continue to use it today to host and integrate all these different information. So I'm just going to run through a couple of projects now, and to just try and give you a bit of a feel of the scope and the depth of what we've been able to achieve in the last nearly 7 years, but 6 years with our monitoring journey. So I'm going to share with you a couple of projects here. All of them are a little bit different in their own way to give you a bit of an appreciation of the depth and scope of what we've done. So our first baptism of fire, you could say, in the monitoring space was a project we had here in Brisbane. It was a $600 million integrated development, and this was a client that I had prior to the commencement of this project. They came to me with a really significant challenge that this piece of land had. It was the last remaining piece of developable land in this area, very close to the centre of Brisbane, and it had a number of very high constraints and risks for the builder and also the developer in terms they had to manage these risks if they were going to successfully deliver this development. So the South Point project, in summary, we were managing, trying to control risk around the main arterial railway line to the centre of Brisbane. Brisbane's a city with roughly, and it's growing, I'm not quite sure the latest figures, but between 2 and 3 million people. It's very spread out, and a lot of people rely on these transport corridors and to get into the city and transit through the city. So the main rail and bus lines that actually went to the city of Brisbane were immediately adjacent to this development. And we also had one of the very few heritage buildings. So when we talk heritage buildings in Brisbane, we talk about 150 years old. So I know that's not very old from other people in the parts of the world, but there's very few of these buildings left in Brisbane. So there was a high degree of interest, but also responsibility on the contract to preserve the integrity of some of these heritage buildings. So this was our baptism of fire. Our client came to us and said, we've been asked to manage risk on these assets while we conduct our work, and we need to do it in near real time. We need to do it and alert these people every half an hour that if we need to stop a train or we need to stop a bus because part of these corridors has been failed, we need to know that. And this was a rather large headache for my client, our client at the time, that how are we going to come up with a system that's going to mitigate that risk. So This was our baptism of fire. I spoke with, I did a fair bit of research, and we came up with a system whereby we used a number of different sensors on this project. Our baptism of fire was using geodetic sensors, so total stations, automated total stations measuring roughly at about 1 hour frequencies for 3 years. But we integrated that with all sorts of other geotechnical, vibration and structural sensors to mitigate these risks for the customer. So it was certainly a fantastic learning opportunity, and we also got a lot of recognition, as we'll share with you later, around our efforts on this first project. So we're very lucky to get this opportunity, and we've taken that opportunity then to really expand our capabilities into some other areas. So the next opportunity I want to share with you was one around a large infrastructure plant we had here in Brisbane. This was another existing client of ours that was tendering for works to refurbish the main sewage treatment plant in our city. So this is a critical piece of infrastructure. This infrastructure serviced about 60% of the waste that was coming from the city of Brisbane. So it's a major facility, and it was also quite an old facility. It's been in existence for nearly up to 100 years in places, and some of the structures here, also being a sewage treatment plant, it was on an alluvial floodplain. So some of there are parts of the plant that are not particularly stable. This sort of stuff all flows downhill. We all know that. So the places for sewage treatment plants are generally in areas of floodplains and things like that. So there was significant risk for this project in that we were asked to try and mitigate the risk of collapse, or the main risk around this project is around creating holding the integrity of these tanks while they were being dewatered. So as you can see in the center there, these tanks, we're looking at replacing the diffusers, which is the areas that stir up and aerate the sewage. But there was a significant risk that once one of these tanks was dewatered, is that the tanks no longer are in a state of equilibrium, I suppose. So the whole system is a 24-hour system. These tanks very, very rarely get drained. And while they're all full and operating, everything's stable. There was a big risk that if you actually take the effluent out of one of these tanks, that they could compromise the integrity of the tank. But also if there was some sort of collapse or leak, that the people working in that tank would be exposed to some of the materials. So it was quite a high risk activity. We assisted our client we worked with them to come up with a design which actually then helped them secure the project by being able to mitigate those risks efficiently for the service authority. And that was a really successful outcome, because we actually helped our client get the project, and they were able to manage it with a high level of integrity throughout the cycle. So it's just another interesting opportunity. Another one we've applied is in the water space was around insurance, and this was a project up at Phrygian Springs, whereby we were working with a civil contracting client that was looking to do a development around this existing water reservoir. Our client had a major issue being able to acquire insurance to actually perform the work, because of the high risk that if this tank was compromised in any way during the construction work, so there was some rock breaking happening, there was also some excavation and filling happening in the close proximity to the tank, and our client's insurer was quite concerned with the amount of with the work and how our client could demonstrate that they were mitigating the risk of compromising this tank during the work. So we actually worked with this civil contractor to design and implement an automated monitoring system in near real time to ensure the integrity of that tank throughout their construction cycle. So this was, our client was quite thrilled in the fact that this helped them obtain insurance, but also it really improved their standing with the water authority that they were working around, in that they could demonstrate a very innovative way to mitigate the risks associated with their activities. So on this project, we used vibration sensors, geophones, we use structural sensors, and we also use geodetic sensors to confirm any resulting displacement from any construction activity.
Interesting. Hey, Lee, I have a question for you on that note. Looking at those projects, and as you have it in the title, it says diverse, and that's the one thing I always find interesting about this monitoring industry is every day I find out about a new kind of application of monitoring. So how do you go about finding these different diverse opportunities, as you call them, and kind of educating the client or the stakeholder that monitoring systems are the right way to go?
I think good question, Riley. I think I'll speak later in my presentation. I think about why I believe everyone that gets into the monitoring space should be looking to I suppose, be a thought leader and present what they do. I think we've been quite successful in trying to showcase the success that we've had. Okay, and it's about telling the story, Riley. Really, in essence, we obviously use the power of referral and marketing is very good, but I think also selling the story to other people to think that possibly there's another way of doing this is very powerful. So I don't have the silver bullet, but certainly I think being able to share your success, being able to develop and share your knowledge in this space, I think is a very powerful metaphor for growing opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to state before you move on to everyone on the call, if you do have any questions for Lee as we go through, feel free to type them in the question window in the GoToWebinar, and we can take a look at those as we go and at the end as well. Back to you.
Thanks, Riley. I'll just speak briefly about another interesting project that we had. Again, Riley, you speak about how do you get these opportunities. We were referred to a major infrastructure company that was responsible for delivering a new crossing across the Great Dividing Range here west of Brisbane. So it's a major road infrastructure project, $1.6 billion. And again, we were contacted by these guys around, they had a serious, they were at wit's end trying to, I suppose, prevent risk around safety of workers on an embankment. So this was an embankment. You may be able to see it in the distance here. There's a really large viaduct, and at the end of that viaduct there was an embankment, and that embankment wasn't performing as they intended, and they had to have a process whereby they were reducing the load on this embankment to bring some stability back to it. So there was a situation where they contacted us and they wanted to be able to preserve the safety of the workers primarily. This was quite a short-term deployment, but they wanted to preserve the safety of their workers while they were deloading and putting machinery and people off the top of this very large embankment you can see here. So they came to us with this great challenge, as some of you might be able to relate to. They said, we need to know if this embankment's moving by less than 5 millimeters every 15 minutes. And I said, that's great, that's okay. And I scratched my head. The problem is this whole area. This is a very big area, as you can see possibly on the bottom photo. We were talking sighting. If you're going to look at a total station, you're looking at total sighting distance of maybe 300, 400, 500 meters from what they deem as stable. No one really knew what was stable and what wasn't. And so we really had to scratch our heads, and we came up with a solution using GNSS. We basically used 6 Trimble Net R9s, and obviously getting power into a place like this was very, very difficult. So we hooked them up to solar, and we came up with, we had to try and get the levels of precision with, obviously, those of you, and I assume we do have some geospatial experts on the line. 5 millimeters in 15-second epochs is a pretty difficult challenge to overcome with GNSS. So we did come up with, we did a little bit of research and development on this project, whereby we used the Net R9s, and we also used some advanced data filters, including weighted mean and Kalman filters, with some specialized design assumptions to come up with this near real-time alerting system, I suppose, which replicated this 5 millimeter precision the client was looking for. So commercially, I would say, unfortunately, this project, once it was kind of de-risked, the weight came off the embankment, and once it stabilized to a degree, we didn't continue for a long period of time. But certainly, I suppose this is an example where we actually learned a lot about the power of GNSS and short baseline and automated monitoring to solve some problems. So if you are interested in some of what we discovered there, we did publish a paper for the International Global Navigation Satellite System Association back in 2017. And if any of you are interested in getting a copy of that paper, we'd be more than happy to share that with you. Probably just contact Riley, or you can send us an email after the presentation. We'd be more than happy to share it. I suppose just finally on the project side, all these opportunities actually culminated in a fantastic mega project here in Brisbane. The opportunity. So I suppose we were quite lucky in that we started this journey a number of years ago, and then we got the opportunity to participate in the Queen's Wharf project back in 2017. So this is for Brisbane, this is a big deal. This is, and I think even for any, I think it's the biggest excavation in the Southern Hemisphere at the moment. I might be wrong, but it's a $4 billion integrated resort development, casinos, 4 commercial towers, enormous project. And they had a very deep excavation. This is right in the heart of Brisbane, and a very deep excavation combined with as a few of these last remaining heritage buildings in Brisbane. There's very few of them left, and they basically adjoin the entire site. The other major constraint for our customer, for the developer, was you'll see there's this elevated bridge structure that sits to the south, right next to the Brisbane River. And this road here, we call that the Riverside Expressway. That's the main arterial road that comes into Brisbane from the south. So this road, that bridge structure was actually built about 35 years ago. And there has been in prior, I think some of you may have remembered, even overseas, we had a major flood here in 2011. And during that flood, this bridge structure actually wasn't as stable as what people had hoped. So this bridge structure actually created serious risk for this project. So we were very lucky on this mega project in Brisbane to be involved with the developer. There's some pretty crazy numbers put up when we first started this project. The engineers came armed with it saying, we've got to do monitoring and we need this many sensors. And originally our client proposed over 30 total stations, 40 vibration units and a further 500 sensors to mitigate the risk on this project. Now, they asked me to price it. I gave them a price. They soon changed their tune. They were interested in talking about a different way of going about it. So we worked very closely with them to come up with an optimized design. We ended up getting less than half the amount of sensors. It's still a mega project. We've still got 13 total stations working. Still, at this point in time, we've got 13 total stations integrating in a network solution 24/7, taking nearly 450 prism observations every hour. We're integrating that with piezometers, inclinometers, range of environmental sensors, temperature, pressure, rainfall, as well as vibration, extensometers and the like, all being integrated in T4D. So our T4D system is really working very, very hard at the moment, and it's performing very well. So we're actually 2 years left to go. If you want to go online and have a look at the project, there's a lot of focus there in terms of its evolution, but essentially we're looking at 2 years left in the monitoring regime. We've been going for 3 years to this point in time. There's over 50 different stakeholders we communicate to in T4D, so it's coping. It's really a fantastic opportunity and just shows the breadth and scope of where you can take automated monitoring.
Just the amount of data is crazy, and you said 50 stakeholders, so I'm guessing like everyone under the sun on that project is looking at the monitoring data, right, if they have a stake in it.
Yeah, so the types of people, Riley, we have there is everyone from the contractors, the individual contractors working responsible for certain activities, through to the principal contractor, through to the developer. There's actually 2 principal contractors on site, funny enough. So we're monitoring for essentially 2 lots of principal contractors, 2 lots of subcontractors. There's also the developer, and outside of that, there's all the designers. So there's actually 3 different designers on the project, civil and structural designers. And in addition to that, there's all the regulatory authorities. So there's the Transport, Department of Transport and Main Roads. There's the Heritage, Department of Heritage and Cultural Heritage is also looking at the platform. And so there's a number of government and private stakeholders all plugged in, and they're all got a login, and yeah, works pretty well most of the time. Humans are funny creatures, Riley, as we all know. The most uncertain thing in the system is the people sometimes, but that's what we love about our jobs. You know, it's interesting. The people you meet is fantastic. So am I going for time? Not too bad. So I'll now just flick over, I suppose, to Riley mentioned, you know, how do you actually get these opportunities out there, and how do you, how do you, I suppose, grow the market and grow the opportunities for automated monitoring and get engagement, I suppose, even by your peers. So if you're working within a project and you're responsible for this stuff, how do you get further engagement up the line to get a better understanding of what you do? So I just want to give everyone in the community, I suppose, a bit of a share some of my experience. I wouldn't say this is the only thing. I'm sure you guys have got some great ideas as well, but these are the things I think that have really helped us proliferate that message and create new opportunities for what we do. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things. I think I'm going to touch on thought leadership. I'm going to touch on how we go about engaging and understanding outcomes. As I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about thinking out of the box when it comes to your design and integration of your information, and also about communicating uncertainty. I think that's something that is always a bit of a challenge for people in this field, and it helps with this engagement of what we do. So in terms of thought leadership, I'm going to just raise a couple of things here which I think I believe are really successful in terms of being able to get that engagement and get new opportunities and really improve and drive your product. I think you need to be a thought leader in this space, okay? If you want, this is a new pioneering age, right? IoT, automation, cloud computing. You really need to be able to push the boundaries in terms of get out there and become a thought leader in terms of what we provide. You know, Joel Kurtzman, who's the editor-in-chief of magazine Strategy and Business, first sort of came up with this term, thought leadership, and he coined the term in 1994. It was he that said that thought leaders are people who possess a distinctively original idea, a unique point of view, or an unprecedented insight into their industry. And some people define thought leadership as being known for making a difference, right? So, and I really do think, I think for those of you who are looking to advance monitoring and try and take it further in the community, I think it's really important that you think about becoming, obviously one of the first things I think is about being recognized by your peers. You know, you really have to be generous with your knowledge, okay? You need to be able to be a leader in new ways of thinking and innovation. You really have to look to have a deep understanding of the business you are in, okay? So what I mean by that statement is you really need to understand deeply all about sensors, the business you're in, delivering professional services, or delivering that outcome to your customer, okay? So deeply understand what you're in, understand how the other really important thing is understanding the need of your customers, okay? And understand the market in which they're operating, you know. I've been very lucky to be able to implement some of these improvements because I've worked for many years in the construction industry, so I understand the pressures that our clients face. Okay, so you have to really deeply understand the market in which they operate, and I think if you can put yourself in the shoes of your client and understand deeply what they need to solve and the marketplace and the challenges they face, I think you can go a long way to getting that engagement with your customer and helping them get an understanding of what how they can best adopt that monitoring. Okay. So this certainly, having these types of things really gives you drives a passion to do more and innovate and test boundaries with what you do. So when I talk about recognised leadership, you know, we've been very lucky. I wouldn't say lucky. Possibly, we put a lot of effort into. We put a lot of effort into getting recognition for what we do. So we regularly. You'll talk about the first opportunity I spoke to you about South Point. We were lucky to have that article picked up and published in a number of journals in Australia. We were lucky enough to have it picked up in the United States, funny enough. POB magazine, which some of you may be familiar with, How to Monitor Down Under. It's a pretty amusing title. I'm surprised we didn't have Crocodile Dundee on the shot there, but yeah, it was great. It was great to get that recognition in the United States for what we've achieved, and certainly yeah, it's about publishing some of those successes, getting those articles out in the marketplace really helps people understand the benefits of what you provide. We also regularly, you know, we also regularly showcase our work, and we enter our efforts in industry excellence awards, and we've been very lucky to pick up a number of those awards over the years. One of them, in fact, I'll share with you with another project, was Asia Pacific Spatial Enablement in 2018. So that's a leading business in the Asia Pacific, Australia and New Zealand, for enabling their projects with spatial data. So that was an extreme honour to be able to receive that from our peers. So that peer recognition is very, very, very important. We also, you know, we really take a lot of pride in the reporting that we provide as well here. You know, in being able to present your results, to get that high level of engagement and understanding. You know, T4D is a fantastic tool. There's a lot of ways to visualize the data. But you know, we also enhance that ourselves with different experimentation with visualization and the like. So really, you know, go on that journey and try and do a better job of presenting and getting that understanding from your customer or your client. I just want to briefly understand, just share with you some points that when we talk about understanding client outcome, what's really important to identify when you speak to customers when it comes to engagement and client outcomes. Yeah, firstly, it's really important to understand why you're monitoring in the first place. Okay, and I know this might sound 101 and feel like we're going back to university here, but I do believe a lot of the times we do things because we're told to do them. Okay, and I really always question that and say, well, please tell, you know, you really need to understand why. Why is it being done? Understand deeply what are the risks you're trying to manage. That's really important to understand an outcome for the customer. It's really important to understand who you're reporting to. Okay, so as I said before, a stakeholder list of 50. I needed to make sure that if I was producing a report or some sort of submission to people that would further down that chain, that I had a level of understanding of who was going to be receiving that report and who was it for. Okay, so you actually need to tailor your language to your audience. Okay, so it's really important to understand who you're reporting to, because everyone has a different level of expertise or understanding of the problem you're trying to address. You have to understand how often and when they need to be communicated with. Okay, and that's a really critical bit of information. I always ask is how often do you need this information, and often that will then with the next question is how quickly do you need it. Okay, and usually those two things can have an immediate impact on how you design your monitoring network. Okay, so if you don't need it very often and you don't need it very quickly, well, quite often you may not even need to automate. But those two things are really quite fundamental in the way we design our systems. Okay, and it's also really important to understand the design outcome you're replicating. Okay, so it's really important to understand what is the prediction, right? And what I'll say also, what is the uncertainty with that prediction? So every monitoring really is there to replicate a design outcome. Okay, every structure, everything we do, essentially there's a prediction out there somewhere that says it shouldn't do this or that. Okay, or it has been designed to behave in a certain way. What's important is you really need to understand what is that behavior outcome, or how has it been designed, and then your job as someone in this space is to try and replicate that, and then provide critical points where you believe that structure is diverging from that design prediction. Okay.
It's almost like a checklist of when you go into that first meeting, right? These are the things you absolutely have to ask to really understand what you're getting into.
And this is not just for people, Riley. I just say that for everyone on the phone. It's not it's not just if you're a consultant. You know, this is if you're running your own monitoring project within a large authority. You know, these are the sorts of things you really need to identify very clearly up front.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know, as I said, we're really proud about our team. We've got a fantastic team of people work here at Monitum, and we do regularly enter awards and showcase what we do. And you know, we were recognised as I said, in 2018, but in the Asia Pacific for spatial enablement, and we were actually being able to do that purely because we went through very strongly at the start of the project, and we'll be able to understand some of those, get that deep understanding from our customer of what were the risks and what were the problems they wanted us to solve. Once we had that information, we were able to then serve up some really innovative and really spatially enable their projects and deliver consistent outcomes to them. So, yeah, the Hurston Quarter project for us, a fantastic achievement. You know, this one involved, I suppose, the difference. This was a very sensitive project purely because this was a large redevelopment inside the Royal Brisbane Hospital. So it was a really sensitive environment to be doing significant amount of blasting and rock breaking and all those types of things. You know, this project, we were recognised for excellence purely because we were able to manage some of the risks around the deep excavation that they had to perform. There was critical medical research laboratories that adjoined this site, so abutted right next to this deep excavation were critical laboratories for the treatments of in Brisbane here. University of Queensland had their research facility right next door. Sensitive treatments around the treatments for malaria and cancer were all being conducted in this building. We also had adjoining the excavation the mental health unit for the Royal Brisbane Hospital, which was a building right next door. So there's some really sensitive, risks that had to be managed, both for these buildings. And we came up, monitoring was just part of the solution that we delivered. We innovated in a lot of other ways with UAVs and laser scanning and the like, and modelling, but monitoring for this project was a real winner for our customer. I think that they even said to us that they really engaged fully in the T4D platform. So we integrated everything from vibration to noise monitoring, structural monitoring, deformation and the like. But this client really adapted the appetite for T4D, and we pushed that to a number of stakeholders all throughout the hospital. And it was a really successful outcome. It got a lot of great exposure for our client, and it was a successful outcome for our client. They successfully completed this building last year, and they're looking at more opportunities in the hospital as a result of what they conducted.
Cool.
So I just want to talk briefly now. I'm just going to check my timing. How are we running, Rob? Not too bad.
Yeah, about 10 minutes from the top of the hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to talk briefly about monitoring design and integration. And I know I'm sure there's some of you out there that have been given similar opportunities to ourselves, and you're probably using T4D to manage a host of different types of data, and that's fantastic. And I do want to say that's really, I think, the power of T4D. Yes, it's a great engine to be able to run your total stations and your GNSS processing and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. But I think the real power of T4D is being able to integrate different types of information with some of the more traditional sort of geodetic type sensor information that we'd use with total stations and GNSS. Okay, so I really think what's really important is, as I said, going back, informing your data design and integration by having really strong customer engagement, understanding the problems you're going to solve, will more than often then help you identify what sorts of data you need, or you can suggest or recommend, right, and how you integrate that information, and that's really important. So data design and integration, I suppose, is that motivating factor of how we create valuable insights, and our customer is really looking, anyone that delivers a monitoring project, your user is looking for valuable insights, things that you're going to tell them before they happen, okay? And so you'd really be looking for that valuable insight into what the problem they're trying to solve. So I always say it's not actually what you measure with and where. I'm quite a lot of the time, when people say, I've got a monitoring project, I need you to solve it, and they're very quick to tell you as someone who knows about monitoring is, I need this many sensors and I need them there. But what they don't understand is the practicalities of what they don't understand. A number of things that come with data, with monitoring design and integration, right? Firstly, that they don't understand a lot of the time the accuracy and uncertainty that comes with some of those observations. Okay, closed geotechnical sensors, different story. But when they're talking about total stations and GNSS, quite often non-experts in measurement science space don't have a good handle on what some of those true accuracies are, right? So what's really important is it's not just it's important where you monitor it, okay? And a lot of the engineers say I need a point here or I need a point here, and obviously that's good information, and a lot of the time you need to adopt that. But you also need to think outside of that and saying, well, if I'm going to give the integrity around those critical points, I may actually need to measure other points and additional points to support a successful outcome in those critical locations, okay? So it's really important where you monitor it and to be able to create correlation and common trends in the different types of sensors that you're doing. So when you place those sensors, it's really important that a trend in one sensor will correlate to something else in another type of sensor. So for example, having an inclinometer in the ground that's several meters away from where you've got your total station observations may not necessarily correlate, okay? So it's important that you line up and you align your sensors in a way that they kind of support each other in what they're trying to predict. The other thing that people don't appreciate quite often or don't consider without experts is the restrictions around how you actually put this stuff in and how you maintain it, okay? So they don't talk about the restrictions on access. How do you install these instrumentation and how do you maintain it? In some of these construction environments, they're very restricted environments, so they don't consider those things. They don't talk about power and communications. They need to be considered. What is the optimal places to do that? They do generally tell you, I need an observation every 10 minutes in terms of a risk mitigation, but that doesn't necessarily tell you that that's the frequency you need to be able to come up with a sure and accurate result, right? So quite often you need to observe more data to actually give them that consistent result at that frequency they require. So also think about how frequently you have to measure, not just for what your client needs, but in order to achieve an accurate or sustainable result, okay? And the other big key is how do you weight or adjust your measurements, and that really depends on your network design and all these types of things that happens, okay? So T4D, as I said, is a very powerful tool to combine data The pivot platform's an excellent engine to operate and adjust geodetic total stations and total receivers. But I think really looking to combine different data types and sources is a really powerful way you can enhance your monitoring outcome. I just had another example here. This is another project where we achieved those types of data integrations very well. You'll see here was another project we did, critical railway line corridor, deep excavation, transport infrastructure adjoining the site. And you know, this client came to us with very little understanding of what needed to be monitored and where. The Transport Authority had some very fixed ideas on what they wanted the monitoring to look like. But we actually worked with them and came up with a more practical way and said, look guys, this may not achieve the right result. We trialed some new sensors on this one. So we used some shape accelerators, which are a different type of geotechnical sensor for measuring displacement in a borehole. And we integrated those with a lot of our total stations and other geodetic observations. It gave a very successful result. So yeah, integrating different types of sensors and be able to work with clients to adapt, I suppose, that network to make it work for the project is very important. So just in summary, you know, what you should be looking for in your monitoring data design and integration, you should be looking for those actionable insights. Clients want to know things before they happen with confidence. You know, without that deep understanding, and I say this, without a deep understanding, it's impossible to have a deeper understanding, right? And really, as experts, right, our experts is to have a deeper understanding than other people in this space, okay? So you really need to go that extra step, find out what you're dealing with to give that real deeper understanding so people can trust and rely on the information you provide. As I said, aim for multiple sources of evidence of behaviour and redundancy to support actions, okay? So really look for building redundancy in your monitoring networks. That's very, very important. Have routine maintenance, okay? In order for your system to be valued, it must be maintained, okay? And we've been called quite a few times from people that spend a lot of money on installing monitoring systems but don't do the right things to maintain the system and maintain the value of the data. They get paid to put it in, they don't get paid to maintain it. And I can suggest to anyone that's sort of proposing to go ahead with monitoring, you need to allow for maintenance of the system as it goes, because the environment changes. That's why we're monitoring. So it's really important that you have a documented and a reliable maintenance procedure to ensure that that information, the quality of the information, can be used for the life of the project. And I always say automate where possible, and that's a bit of a thing we have within our business in Monitum. Wherever possible, let's automate it. And so we use T4D is very powerful. You can use a lot of internal reports, alerts and notifications to tell you when something's not working or going wrong. So wherever possible, push the limits and try and automate to save yourself time and energy. I'm going to briefly talk about degree of confidence, and this is usually a very topical, it's a difficult challenge for a lot of people to overcome with monitoring, is understanding how, you know, what that uncertainty is with measurement. Because quite often you speak with an engineer and they say, when it moves by 3 millimeters, I want you to notify everyone under an alerting system. And even if it says it's 40 millimeters, you'll find people don't understand that, especially with a lot of geodetic observations, that there's uncertainty in that level, okay? There's uncertainty in that observation, and you might get a situation where you get close to a 40 millimeter measurement, it goes up to 40 millimeters, the next day it's 38.7, okay? So it's really very important up front in your projects to try and come up with understand the uncertainty of your system the uncertainty that comes with the system, and then to make your client or the stakeholders aware of what that uncertainty is, okay? And we have some just general formulas here whereby when we set our automated triggers, so if we're looking at setting up a trigger or a notification to people, whether it's a warning, generally we try and have multiple layers, okay? We always set a lower level for ourselves, and then, as I said, try and automate where possible. But we always have this conversation with the client around uncertainty. And what's really important is this is obviously if you can get a baseline, and now a lot of projects we don't get a baseline, but obviously if you can evaluate what that uncertainty of the system is, and then also track the uncertainty of your system, the performance of your system at the time, really you should be adding those uncertainties. If you're going to be setting any sort of alerting or triggers, they need to accommodate the uncertainty in the system, okay? So it's important, as I said, don't just qualify the engineering tolerance, okay? Make sure when you are alerting and when you're notifying that there's a margin that you put in there of safety that includes the uncertainty of your monitoring system. I'm probably running a little bit over time, Riley. Would you like me to?
Yeah, no, continue. Yeah,
or?
I think we're good. Yeah, we'll finish it off strong, and anyone who has the time can stay on, and people can drop off and watch the recording later if needed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Carry on.
I haven't got too many slides to go for those who've got to do other things. So thanks for sticking with me. Commercial. I just wanted to talk briefly about standards development, and this is, as I said, with an emerging industry, a lot of automation. And even, monitoring is not new, right? And everyone's been monitoring for quite a long time. This is, there aren't a lot of standards out there that apply to what we do. So if someone says, how should we monitor it? It really does come down to really expertise and knowledge and I suppose understanding technically those structures and the game you're in, okay? I know there's probably in different parts of the world, and I'd really like to hear from other people that are on the line in this conversation, if they're participating in evolving standards around how we monitor different types of structures. Certainly I'd love to make contact with you and possibly work with you to help try and develop some industry standards around how we monitor structures. I think that would be really beneficial. But there is some challenges out there. Is that there's no rule book for how all structures should be monitored. Okay, every structure performs differently under load, and really engineers' jobs are to create designs and predict outcomes that result with that design. So, our experience is there's very limited standardization in this field. Rules generally vary from project to project. So it's really, so this is where we strongly recommend that experienced professional provider, someone who's experienced at building evidence. So building evidence in terms of what could be relied upon for, in terms of describing and clearly articulating that behaviour to meet a regulatory expectation. So at the moment, a lot of it's around expectations, okay? So having an experienced provider, someone who, look for someone with broad knowledge and experience that understands the risks that apply to the health of structures. And I also recommend you also look to a registered or professional person in your field. So like in Australia here, we have, in other parts of the world, you have registered or professional surveyors, and these people are recognised with qualifications and competency in measurement. So if you're looking for someone who can be relied upon, really look to someone who's been deemed competent, has strong qualifications that can support the case of what's being achieved. So I'm just going to conclude the last 10 minutes or so just with some of the future trends. You guys are probably over this just as much as we are, but you know, for me, I really, as I said, this space, the monitoring space, I think is and this risk management space, I think is a very exciting. There's some very exciting opportunities coming our way for those of you who want to invest, become a thought leader, really push the envelope in terms of delivering some of these technologies at a very high standard that's going to give ongoing benefit to the community. We've already seen, you know, the rise of cloud computing has been a major enhancement for our business, certainly with monitoring. You know, we started with a black box sitting in the corner of a site office with radio links plugged in, running T4D at South Point. After that experience, I moved T4D straight to the cloud because it's just, and then we've never looked back. We've actually been able to share that platform across multiple projects at any one time. So we've managed up to 6 different projects here on T4D at any one time, and all bringing data from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and cloud computing has given us the opportunity to do that. So it's really so expandable. It's really going to create a lot of opportunities to be able to host and manage data. Obviously, sensor technology and the Internet of Things. It's the advancement is just going to continue. The big advancements for me that we've witnessed in the last recent times is enhancement of communication technologies. So I'm talking wireless network communications. Mesh networks, LoRa networks, all these types of things are evolving very rapidly and getting more and more efficient, which is fantastic. Also the battery technology is improving significantly. So, which is also allowing for the cost of these things to come down, which allows us to deploy more. So, sensor technology, that's going to enable digital twins. And digital twin, obviously, to me, digital twins is not just ramped up BIM models. Digital twins are really, when they're fully working, they're sensorized environments, okay? They're interactive 3D models that are actually feeding in data 24/7 around the performance of those assets. So monitoring and sensor technology is going to be fundamental to the future of the digital twin. We're all seeing now the 5G rollout. The new iPhone came out the other day. But yeah, 5G is just going to take it to another level. Okay, we're going to be able to get data quicker in higher volumes, and this is going to turbocharge, I suppose, the data management that we can perform in our monitoring networks. And that obviously more data is going to, and you combine all these things. And I actually think all these technologies are complementary, okay? They're all building to what is a bigger future. Obviously, the more sensors, the more data we have, the lower the cost, the easier we can serve it up, is that then creates an environment where we can start to do some learning and machine learning and training and predictive analysis on some of our information. And that's an extremely exciting space. And I think that's going to be is going to be a real growth area for the decades to come. Obviously also in terms of the areas that we're working in, it's well documented. Dams, tailings and supply is going to continue to be, I think, areas of very high risk. That's already a fairly well sensorized environment, but I think that's even going to increase more in the future. Heritage preservation, again, as these things become more easily to access, we're going to get more of our buildings that are being monitored and evaluated in near real time. You know, our critical infrastructure, as I said, the low cost, we're going to be able to afford to put more sensors in different areas, in different parts of our critical infrastructure. And what that's going to allow for is really asset optimization. I don't call it asset management. I call it optimization. Having an entire infrastructure that's sensorized will allow people to know what different parts of the network are working well, what parts of the network aren't working as well, if you need to program or and essentially, if you're in the asset management space, you'll be able to better manage and optimize your assets over time by using monitoring. You know, more at greater levels and frequencies across your networks. Okay. Obviously, construction damage prevention. You know, the corporate responsibility on a lot of builders now is ever increasing, and the cost of I see another growth area still around our construction damage prevention. You know, building and creating infrastructure and buildings is going to be an area that's going to be further scrutinised, and monitoring is going to be able to support that. An area that we're quite interested in is pavement replacement and maintenance prediction. So, you know, the availability of low-cost sensors, I think, and putting them on some in pavements, you know, there's major costs, I suppose, in repairing. Every road that is designed generally has a shelf life. They all believe that after a certain amount of time, they're going to have to strip it off and put on a new surface. And so pavement replacement, being able to manage and budget for those outcomes for some of the road authorities is a very, I think, an exciting space to play in. And there's a lot of roads. There's a lot more in America and Europe than there is in Australia. But you know, that pavement replacement, I suppose, and optimization, being able to budget when you're going to have to replace a road and when you're not going to have to replace a road, using monitoring to support that, I think would be very powerful. And obviously, you know, the monitoring around health and safety and welfare of our communities, you know, embankments and landslide prevention is a really critical area for the protection of our communities. And so having those sorts of environments that are monitored more and more frequently now, I think, is a growth area. So thank you for the opportunity to present, Riley. And look, I hope everyone today has just maybe got a tip or two of how they can monitor better. Obviously, if you have a monitoring project or you would like for us to possibly work with you and enhance a monitoring outcome, we'd certainly welcome the opportunity to do so. So if you'd like, we've got our email there, monitoring@monitum.com.au. Please make contact with us. Christian's my colleague here. He's our business development manager, and Christian and myself will be more than happy to work with you to understand how we can assist you and enhance your monitoring outcome in the future. So thank you, Riley, for the opportunity, and I wish you all the best in your journey and monitoring moving forward.
All right. Can you hear me all right, Lee? Sorry, I was on mute there.
That's okay, Riley. Yeah.
My bad. That's a technical issue on my side. I was gonna say you could probably leave it on the slide before, and then people have a chance to jot down that email address or that telephone number if they want to contact you. But in the meantime, there's a couple questions. So one of them came from Adam. More kind of a technical installation question, but really interesting nonetheless. And so that question is being in Sunshine State, weather wouldn't typically pose a challenge, but have there been any issues with inclement weather when running an automatic automated total station system, and then how do you solve that challenge?
Great question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Um,
Like any good surveyor or monitoring professional knows, weather can
well, it's
always be
actually
a
a
challenge.
really important question. I'm really glad you asked it. Look, and we invest very heavily, and you know, quite often, sometimes we're asked to come in and say, "Oh, look, we've done this monitoring project. We've set it all up. We just need you guys to manage the data." And that can be a very challenging proposition, purely because, as I said, you really need to invest very strongly in the way that your systems are installed and the way they're set up, and that you can, I suppose, try and prevent any risk of disruption, I suppose, to that monitoring, to that system. So we invest very heavily. We make sure when we install these things in the first place, we make sure that they're in an area that generally won't get disturbed or managed. Now, that's sometimes very challenging, but you take whatever preventions you can to stop people intervening with the equipment, okay? But then we also, you know, we use very solid foundations for what we install our instruments on, okay? So obviously we try and invest very heavily in how we install our instruments. We put a lot of time and effort into how we, you know, cable our instruments and do that, so that basically we don't have, when you get, and we've had some very, we've had a couple of near cyclonic events here in Brisbane while we've had instruments sitting on tops of buildings. We've only had one that was failed, and that was because the rain was virtually horizontal. There's sometimes, Adam, you just cannot prevent Mother Nature, but generally, if you've got a really good install, so my advice is you really invest heavily, I suppose, in the installation, right? Shield your instruments from the environment wherever possible, okay? Yeah, that's really the best prevention, I suppose, you can take to preventing, you know, instruments, you know, failing in environmental conditions. But we've had in the 5 years, as I said, we've had one instrument be sent off to the repairers because it failed, and so if you invest heavily in your installation, you can mitigate that risk.
Awesome. In terms of the future trends that you talked about there, is there a specific trend there that you think will have a bigger impact than others? That let's say out of, you know, the cloud computing, the digital twins, the IoT, and all those other things, that the one that I guess you're keeping the closer eye on in terms of what will benefit your monitoring business the most? Yeah.
Oh, good question, Riley. I really, as I said, those technologies, most of them are all complementary. You know,
Yeah.
Cloud computing is driving IoT. It's driving machine learning, right? And all those together is driving digital twins. So, look, I'm really excited about the prospects for long-term monitoring with generally low-cost devices. I think that's the thing we're really interested in. I think that's going to be a very exciting space. I do think the more critical damage prevention monitoring will always occur, but I think there's a really big market for asset management and optimization with IoT in the decades to come.
Yeah, definitely agree. Awesome. I'll give another few seconds here for anyone else to ask some questions. In the meantime, I can probably come up with some of my own that I've got tons of just me being curious questions about different things. One of the things that I thought was interesting when you're going through the projects that you've worked on and kind of that time order, that you almost introduced like new types of sensors, new types of methods on how you're monitoring. So what is your best resource for kind of learning those different things? Like one of the things I remember off the top of my head was introducing shape arrays onto a project. So
Yeah.
how do you find out about those kind of useful new technologies or new methods?
I think, as I said, I know it might have sounded a bit cheesy, but that thought leadership slide, I think, Riley, is one I think can only guide everyone in the journey, right?
Yeah.
If you have a deep passion for what you do and you're actually sharing your knowledge with other people, I actually find that's probably the best method for getting improvements and innovation in what you do. Okay, so I don't have a per se a publication that I read and that gives me all the answers, or gives our team. You know, we have a team here of 13 guys. All of them are deeply passionate about what they do. They're always coming up with new suggestions. They're presenting papers. They're doing research, and I suppose that just fuels. I suppose it just fuels the wave of opportunities that you get and the appetite to test new things. So I think that thought leadership thing is if you really are interested in progressing in this space, you know, just really get passionate about it and get into it, and I think you'll be able to connect with many other people around the world that can share their experience with you.
Awesome. With that, I think we can call it good. Everybody's got your contact info, so feel free to reach out to Lee if you have any questions, and of course for the consultation if you're interested in that. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and really a huge thanks to you, Lee, for joining and really giving us what I think is the business of monitoring 101 course, really. And this is great information. Of course, there's some resources if anyone on the call wants to find out more about the Trimble monitoring sides of things. You gave better sales pitch than I could about T4D. And definitely anyone can go on the monitoring website and see we've got a few demo sites that are actually live monitoring installations that are running, and you can kind of go in your web browser and see T4D and the reports and different types of information that are coming from that. And of course, with this webinar platform, every month we're putting on a new webinar, so stay tuned and mark your calendars. Every third Wednesday is usually when we try to do this, and we'll keep that going on into the future. And as always, if you have any questions in general about Trimble monitoring, you can reach out to myself, anyone on the teams, as well as your local Trimble distribution partner. So with that, Lee, thanks again, and I think we'll call it good for the day. And anyone on the call, if you want to share this presentation with anyone on your team or any colleagues, there'll be a email that'll come out to you here probably in the next few days that'll have the recording link. So feel free to share that with others. All right, thanks again, and take care, everyone. And we'll see you again in the next webinar. Cheers.